this doesn't sound quiet to me. Okay, good. Welcome to Why Fanfiction is Taking Over the World. I'm in Jamison, or Prof. Ann on Twitter, and I wrote and edited both the book that is sponsoring this panel. Collectively, we are the writers, and in some cases the subjects, of fanfic in fandoms, including but not exclusively the Hunger Games, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, One Direction, Harry Potter, Twilight, the Marvel Universe variously, Sherlock, Supernatural, Craig Left Grossman's The Magician series, The Breakfast Club, Stargate, and arguably Lord Byron's vampire poem, The Jower. I don't know who would do that. As I'm sure many of you know, Rachel Caine is the author of 40 published books, including the Morganville Vampire series. She began writing fanfic at the age of 14, before she knew what that was, and fanfic for about 25 years before returning to it in the middle of her publishing career. Her fanfic alter ego has recently turned pro and published a media tie-in novel for Stargate. Let's see, Amber Benson is a writer. Amber Benson has been invited to my classes as basically as multimedia.
I just need an iPad in my head.
As an example of multimedia. So she is a writer, actor, director, and maker of things. Some of these things are films. Some of these things is a blog. Amber Benson wrote this .blogspot.com. She lives in LA, doesn't own a television, is currently at work on her next novel, The Witches of Echo Park. And she is fairly sure her Buffy character, Tara McClay, currently enjoys cunnilingus with Counselor Troy from Star Trek on a regular basis. Christina Lauren Billings is half of Christina Lauren, author of the Beautiful Bastard series and author of somewhere over 1 million words of Twilight fan fiction. And Christina is also part of Christina Lauren, the author of the Beautiful Bastard series published by Simon & Schuster, and The Office, and The Office, 23% of which, variously construed, may have made it into the Beautiful Bastard series. I first met Christina because I was on a panel. In my business, we call them not conventions, but conferences. So at our version of a con, I was on a panel where somebody had written their master's thesis about Christina's fic. And so I thought I should read it. And that's when all the trouble started. Heidi Tandy is also known as Heidi. She is the Harry Potter fandom. Started fan fiction, in some ways was part of starting fan fiction on the web as we now know it, with sites like Harry Potter for grown-ups and moderating too many other sites that I could possibly mention. She also writes fic and is an intellectual property attorney. So she's wearing those hats and frequently writes about fanfic and legal issues. And finally, The Arrow, also Aim My Arrows High, has written fan fiction for 14 years and original fiction since she was 2 years old. The Panem Companion also currently writing mainly RPF about One Direction and Union J.
Yeah!
But has also written fic for pretty much most YA lit series. And I'm a professor. And yes. All right. So first I'm just going to turn to our panelists and ask them to tell us a little bit more about who they are, specifically with relation to fanfiction, what their experiences with that have been. I'm going to turn to you first.
I'm always the first.
Well, you're there.
Hi, I'm Rachel Caine, and I really wrote so many fandoms. I did it kind of in the middle of my professional career because, as sometimes happens in professional work, you go between publishers and you really can't get anything done professionally, and I still wanted to write, and I thought, well, I still like writing fanfic, so I'll go back and do that. And I did that for about 3 years solid, and I think I wrote about, 500,000 words maybe, in various fandoms. There's about 15 of them, so I'm not going to list them. But eventually I wrote, I begged and got a job writing a Stargate Media tie-in novel, which was super fun. And that's the only tie-in novel I've gotten to do, so I got busy.
I'm Amber, and Benson. And I don't know why I'm here. No, I'm kidding. I'm here. I don't know why I'm here. No, I wasn't a fanfiction writer, but I did play a character on a science fiction television show, and I think maybe a few of you have written some stuff about her. Naughty things to other people who are also not real, but are kind of real. As long as it's not G.I. Joe, it's okay. But Anne actually asked me to write an essay about sort of the other end of fanfiction, which is sort of being the person that people are writing about, and trying to balance that with also being a creative person, and like how does one sort of mix that, especially like on social media, like am I Amber? Am I Tara? People call me Tara. They love to say hi to Tara on Twitter. And then, there's me, who's being me and silly. So it's sort of this balance of like what's real and what's not real, and sort of the breaking down of like that sort of wall between being an artist and being a fan of art. And now there's starting to be this crossover between the two, and I think it's kind of awesome.
Hi, I'm Lauren, and I wrote stories about Amber doing naughty things. The Buffy universe was my first area of writing fic, and I just kind of kept it back to myself because I didn't know at the time about places like fanfiction.net, any of those resources. But I really dove into the fanfic world after I read Twilight, just like, I don't even know what happened. I always tell, well, I don't always tell people because I don't actually say this that often, but I came for the faded black and I stayed for the people, and so we really just had so much fun writing the stories together that it just takes over and it becomes this really wonderful experience. So yeah, I wrote a little over 1 million words in about a year and a half, and it was really fun, like really fun. I still just love that world so much. So now I write original both YA and adult stuff. With my bestie Christina, who I met in the fandom.
So I'm Christina Hobbs, and I was also TBY 789, and now I'm Christina Lauren. So,
We got married.
So that's a lot of names. So I had never really written anything for fun. I written for school and stuff, and then I was recovering from surgery, and I don't even know how it happened. I ended up on a Twilight fanfiction site on Twilighted, and could not believe there were all of these women just writing stories for the fun of writing it. They were taking these characters that did nothing and having them do everything. And it was just crazy. I mean, they were just writing for fun, and I didn't know anything to say until I saw these women saying it. And so I wrote The Office, and then I wrote some stuff with Lo, who was also Lola's Shoes. And we, along with somebody else, Nina Politic, we ran a charity, a family charity called Venom Gets Back, and now we write original books that are sort of rooted in something for the art. Hi, I'm Heidi. I'm on Twitter as Traveling Heidi, and I'm technically also covering Comic-Con for the Organization for Transformative Works. So if anybody wants to talk about fan creativity, fanish legal issues on camera or on audio, tweet at me, Traveling Heidi, and we will try and coordinate for me to have a chance to talk to you after the panel or tomorrow or part of Sunday, but not too late because Harry Potter fandom panel starts at 4:15. Hope some of you come to that. I've been involved in Harry Potter fandom since the day before Goblet of Fire came out. Within about 3 weeks, I was reading fan fiction because I couldn't believe we were going to have to wait another year for the next Harry Potter book. My God. Then it was a year. We didn't have another book. So me and a couple of my friends decided to found fictionally.org, which has become basically a massive repository of Harry Potter fan fiction. Still growing, still thriving, a lot of fan art, a lot of meta. We link to it. And it's just continuing. Since 2008, I've been involved with the legal committee for the OTW, Protecting Fans' Rights in Transformative Works, which is something that I've been kind of evangelical about within fandom since I started, because I think that's something very important that people sort of know what their legal rights are. I used to get bashed for this a lot because people thought that if we talked about fan fiction publicly, the powers that be would show up to shut us down. They haven't. And I don't think that at this point there's any risk that they're going to, which makes things like this so awesome because it gives fans a chance to sort of get together in person and talk about how awesome fanish creativity is.
I'm V. Arrow. I have currently posted like 2 million words of fic that I've written in the last 2 years. So it spans about 40 fandoms. I'm fairly prolific in weird spurts. I write mostly about boy bands right now. I did write a lot of Hunger Games fic and a lot of Hunger Games meta and a lot of Hunger Games analysis, which is how Smart Pop Folks found me, and commissioned a nonfiction literary criticism book about the Hunger Games that came out last year. And I think it's pretty cool. I think it's really interesting, even though it's nonfiction literary criticism about the Hunger Games. Actually, it is the basis of an interdepartmental course on media literacy that's coming here at Northern Arizona University. So if you go there, then I will be there speaking, and you'll be learning about the way that I think about stuff, which is pretty cool. I think, anyway. And there's something else in that too. And it will be included as an excerpt in just the general freshman college writing textbook for like all colleges. So you will all get to know why fandom districts are shaped the way that they are, in my opinion, which is cool. And also then boy bands somehow happened. Somehow I was writing boy band fic 10 years ago and writing original YA lit, and I'm still doing it today and have aged 0.
That's a good trick.
You just have to, boy bands stay the same age. You keep getting older, but they stay the same.
There you have it. Boy bands, the fountain of youth. I learned so much from fan fiction. Actually, that leads me to my next question, because really this did, nobody ever believes me, but this really did start as an academic interest for me, because I saw there was so much intellectual interest and sort of excitement and creativity in the way that fans talked about what they loved online, and then ultimately I found it in fan fiction as well, that, you know, takes some digging. Not all of the fan fiction is fascinating cultural analysis. And I really wanted to see how I could bring some of that energy and excitement about being critical and creative at the same time and engaging with text and with television. I wanted to be able to bring that to my university students in Utah. So they need it. So it led me to think a lot about, well, what do you get from fan fiction that you don't get from other kinds of writing and other kinds of reading? Like, what is it that fan fiction is doing for readers and writers that they're not finding somewhere else? And so that's my next question to the panel. And I know that Amber, you feel free to answer a little bit differently on the question, because to my knowledge you don't write fanfiction except in a tie-in way.
Yeah.
So
Is it really fanfiction if it's about yourself?
I call that debut novel.
Selfish. Yeah.
So we'll start. I start at the other end, so you're not always in the hot seat. What do you think that readers and writers get from fanfiction that they can't get somewhere else?
I think there are several levels to it. I think one of them definitely is being able to be represented in a way that media often doesn't, especially in terms of queer narratives. I think that's definitely why there's such prevalence of slash. I think that's why obviously characters like Tara still have fan fiction written about them even after the show is off the air. I think that's why fandoms tend to turn that way, even with like Supernatural where they're brothers but it's starting or like Percy Jackson where they're like 12 but it's starting that way. I think that that's a very vital function of fan fiction, and I think that that is, even if it's not necessarily recognized as a draw for a lot of people into why they like fan fiction, I think that's part of it. Most of the fandoms that I'm in now don't really have a head component at all. So I can really speak to, like, Christina and Lauren will be better at talking about that side, I think. But I think also what as a writer you get from fan fiction that doesn't necessarily come with original is that you can take, not necessarily writing fan fiction about work that you like a whole lot, but fan fiction about work that you wished you liked more. It tends to turn out best, I know for me personally, where maybe you have an unreliable narrator and you want to see what a more reliable character is saying about the world, or you have somebody who's speaking in such a close first person that she's sort of like Katniss, per se, making these pronouncements of noticing something but not thinking about what it means, like that PETA recognizes the sound of whipping even though it's not used in District 12 as punishment. Like, why aren't you noticing what it means? Let me write about that. Or, why does Finnick and Annie have a Jewish wedding when they have Irish names and are from Mexico? That is a lot of the draw, I think, as a writer to fan fiction. And then obviously once you point it out, people go, hey, yeah, why? So then they will read it.
I think that in a lot of ways, I mean, people start, in many cases, writing fan fiction before they really know, or at least those of us who are over 25 and grew up in our younger years when the internet did not exist in the way that it does now. A lot of people wrote fan fiction before they were really able to share it online. But I think that one of the reasons people these days continue writing fan fiction is because there's such an awesome community out there. And it's not just the community of readers, it's the community of your beta readers, the people who you collaborate with, the fun of sharing a new chapter that you've written with somebody who you're friends with to see what they think about it, and the awesomeness of getting feedback on something. There was just a study, I think, earlier this year on the content that's on Archive of Our Own that somebody posted on Tumblr. I have the link for it if anybody wants to tweet at me later. And I'll share it. But basically it discovered that stories that were posted in chapters got more reviews and more feedback just because there was more of a chance for people to dialogue while something, whether it was posted serially or whether it was just posted in multiple chapters at once. And it wasn't that the same person was commenting on every chapter. It was just that people felt once they had gotten to a small section of it that they could, give some feedback on it. And I think that that sort of community is something I'm very scared will disappear if the Kindle worldization impacts more fandoms. I think right now, in some smaller fandoms and discrete fandoms, it's not going to have that kind of import, because A, a lot of people aren't going to want to do it. B, they're only accepting things I think that are 5,000 words or longer. And there's a lot of there's a lot of share out there for fics that are shorter than that. But I'm concerned that if Kindle Worlds exists the way that it does, and it's full-length fics and not things that are serial, and not things that are chaptered, and not things that are getting individual feedback on bits and pieces of it as you write it, then that's going to be something that's a bit of a loss, and I really hope it doesn't happen.
I think, aside from the community aspect, there's the fact that there's no rules when writing fanfic. You can write, any point of view, you can write any tense, you can write about any character. I mean, it can be as long or as short as you want if you want to write, every aspect of that character's life. You can if you want to write them having sex in every chapter. And, and books aren't typically constructed that way, and so it's just really free. It's a big and so it's just really free to be able to just go, oh, I want to write this, and you just write it, and it doesn't.
To talk about her position with relation to the somewhat controversial trend.
Okay, so not surprised to talk about this early on, but so, when, we'll just put it out there, 50 Shades is probably the most well-known one, and when that came out, I came down on the side of being against the idea of it. It made me uncomfortable. I actually probably spoke about it publicly a couple times, just feeling like these stories were about our community. And what's been really interesting over the last year is that it is a complicated issue, and I know we both feel the same about it, so I can speak easily for us. We feel totally comfortable understanding both sides of it. We have no defensiveness when we talk to people about the idea of publishing something that is either stimulated through discussion through a community that's involved with an original work, or that is sort of inspired by original work. My work was really vampire stuff that really wouldn't work as original. The Office is slightly different than that, transitioned well into original, and I think one of the things that we found when we started really hearing more about it, because Christina had taken The Office down almost 4 years ago now, offline. And she'd been asked over the years, over and over and over, when we publish this, both from people who were in the family, but also people who wanted to publish it. She continually said no. And I think what happened was the market really started to evolve, and publishing really started to evolve. And what we saw was that there was really a hunger for these kinds of stories with this kind of energy, and a community that was already sort of had loved it, and so we felt like the way we could do this is if we really reworked it and put it out there, and so part of it was seeing the way the industry had evolved to embrace it a little bit more, and part of it too was a way for us to evolve as authors and to embrace something that had been a fan fiction before, make it into something new, and then we can show some more of our original works as well. But it is a complicated issue, and it's something that we really think a lot about. So,
You look like you might have something to say.
I just sort of wanted to touch on the legal issues on this, because I've gotten so many questions over the last 5 years about this, both from publishing houses and from fans, about the legality of taking your own fanfic and filing the serial numbers off. And obviously, if you're quoting from the original canon, anything that's more than a brief phrase, there's a copyright issue that's vesting itself in there. And plagiarism is and never has been a legal issue. It's not something that's part of the Copyright Act. It's not something that's part of copyright law. Plagiarize without infringing on somebody's copyright. That's what happens if you put Romeo and Juliet under your own name, and you can infringe on copyright without plagiarizing. That's what happens if you take 3 paragraphs from a novel and you don't credit it, but you're still infringing on the copyright of it because it's too long a section. So people have been asking whether or not they can file the serial numbers off of their fanfic. Would they be infringing on their own copyright? And you can't do that. You can't infringe on yourself until you sell the rights or license them away or assign them to somebody else. And I think that it's interesting in fandom to sort of look at the dichotomy between the ethics issues and the legal issues. Because there's a lot of stuff out there that's legal, but the fandom community or certain segments of it, because I don't want to speak about fandom as a whole monolithic, because it's really not. Every individual fandom, and by that I mean not just everybody who's fans of one particular show or one particular book, every individual fandom on a specific platform, whether it's Tumblr or LiveJournal or Archive of Our Own, has a different set of mores, I won't say rules because they're not, of mores, than that same exact group of fans or group of people who are fans of a certain show would on a different platform, in part because of the platform impact on what it is that you're doing. And it's very interesting to sort of look at the different kinds of mores that have sprung up for different parts of fandom and how those have really changed in a lot of ways over the last 15 years. I mean, Anne was talking about zines. Zines were not free. If you wanted to get one, you had to pay for the printing costs. And I remember in 2003, 2004, people were saying, oh, why can't you print out a copy of your fanfic and send it to me because ebooks didn't exist this yet, at least not in the form they do now. I mean, people could download stuff to Palm Pilots, but it's not quite the same. Newtons, I don't think, ever accommodated that. Anyway, people would ask if they could print out somebody's fanfic, and always it was okay to print it out, for yourself, generally. But people wanted fanfic writers to print out their stuff and send it to them, and that was just, oh my God, no, you can't do that. You can't take $15 to cover the cost of printing and shipping it. That's copyright infringement, and it's not.
B, would you like me to speak a bit from the other perspective?
Yeah, I'm one of the people who thinks that it's just not okay to file the serial numbers off of fanfiction. I've had several people on Twitter who have come and said, how dare you be on this panel because you don't believe in filing serial numbers off, and I still don't. Like you were saying, on the, it's maybe not against the rules. I do think that it's unethical. Not as people, like you guys are lovely people. But I think for several, one of them is that in fanfiction, like Anne was saying, there's 300,000 fanfics and 7 of them have deals. But how many tropes of those are shared between so many writers who, in essence, helped create the ones that got deals because they did the trope first, or they created this character of like Leather Pants Draco, or you can't really ever have a fan fiction that is only your work because you're writing it to a canon and a fanon, and that fanon belongs to everyone. And I feel like you can't claim that it's only yours unless you're literally the only person writing fic for that thing. But then that's weird because it's not really fan fiction also if there's no community for it. And then you're also just still taking it from canon, and that's wrong too. So, I don't know. I have a lot of feelings about it. And also I think with the Kindle worlds, or the Amazon worlds, I think that part of the concern is also with what Christina was talking about, with there's no rules in fan fiction, but there are a lot of rules to the Kindle Worlds project. And I think as fan fiction becomes more monetized and becomes more mainstream, people are going to start approaching it in a way that you should follow rules because you should be looking at it as something you can cash in on. And I don't think that anything that you do for passion or anything that you do for love or wanting to just like a thing and share it with other people who like that thing should have an expectation that you can't be doing it just for fun. It shouldn't have an expectation that you must be doing it for money or you're doing it wrong. I don't think that it should have an expectation of, well, you're good at it, so you're obviously going to abandon the fandom and betray us all and just take this story. Because I've noticed a lot of people no longer leaving feedback because they're afraid of people doing that.
And that's a big fear, but I want to take some questions in about 3 minutes, but I just wanted to hear a minute from the people who have written tie-ins, and to just talk a little bit about that, because a lot of people will say, well, isn't that just fan fiction? And I think you were starting to get at the idea of like why it's not really fanfic, or isn't quite like that. Like, what are the rules like? So Amber, you wrote a comic book, right?
Yeah, I co-wrote with Christopher Golden a couple of Willow Terra comic books for Dark Horse when I was on the show. It's so interesting to listen to all of this, and I don't quite 100% know how I feel, other than just living your life and experiencing things and talking to people and hearing their experiences. That is how we create. So it's tough to go, well, no, you can't do this because it's a fandom thing, or you can do this because it's a fandom thing. I'm very confused by all of this, because I think that just because you've created something doesn't mean that it becomes just yours forever. Like, even if we forget about it, someone 100 years down the line may have that same idea. So I feel like there is sort of a Jungian collective unconscious that we all kind of tap into in a way. I think there are ethical things that we have to be aware of. Obviously, law things that you have to be aware of. Those pesky law things. But I think to come down one way or the other and say, this is totally right and this is totally wrong, I think that you have to look at it in terms of grayscale. That's just my take on it.
I just wanted to say, one of the things that kind of has always puzzled me, and this got kind of hit me in the face hard when I first published my first book. I always write for love. I don't care what I'm writing. I am writing for love. I don't do it for the money. I do it for love. I get the money. Awesome. I I don't think there are two audiences. I think one may read a preponderance of one, preponderance of the other. But if it's good, they're going to go get it. And I think this idea that we can't all be one supportive community is kind of strange. I'm kind of you. I'm puzzled.
It's that possessiveness stuff, which I see, like, as an actor, people are possessive of a character that you play, you know, and they're like, well, they wouldn't be like that, they wouldn't say that, or they wouldn't do, you know. Like, there's this possessiveness thing that comes out of fandom sometimes, that I think is sometimes in a negative way, where people can't get beyond, like, what this thing is, and it's not part of the canon, or it wasn't spoken by this person that created it, or it wasn't, then it doesn't exist, or it's wrong. And I just can't live in a world where it's wrong to have a feeling about something.
I found one, in the course of doing all this research for the book, I found one constant in fandom, and it is that one generation of fans likes to say to the next generation of fans, "You're doing it wrong, you bad fan."
Wrong.
At the dawn of time, like people crawled out of caves and said, "Bad fan art." I would like now to open it up to some questions. Yes?
Hi, I have a question for V and for you, Anne. I have opportunity to do postgrad in literature at my uni in Australia, and I wanted to write about, I'm a huge Transformers fan, especially the new comics by IDW, and I wanted to write about like themes of war and social politics in the Transformers universe as like a non-fiction analysis. But the thing that gets me is when I go to apply, or like the application thing, it's like contributing something like to a greater purpose. And I always get stuck on this. It's like, do I really want to spend the next 2 years writing this thing about, you know, a fandom that's based around toys and transforming robots? Like, what is that going to contribute? And like, I wonder whether you experienced that or how you got over that, and then you as a professor, like what you think about that.
We want to read it.
I mean, I also write about Kafka, and I can tell you there's less critical work on the Transformers fandom. So, you go! I can't promise that you'll get a job after it, but in terms of like what we used to think our function was, which was contributing to knowledge, that's a great project. All right, next question? Oh, yeah? Hi?
She didn't
Sorry,
get to answer.
Sorry, that's right. I was quick.
I was just going to say, Transformers is a really, really huge franchise, and anything that it is sending out there would be a part of social behaviors and media literacy. So if nothing else, I mean, it definitely contributes to that, and that's kind of my stock answer when people say that, you know, The Hunger Games is written below its reading level and is very simplistic and follows the 3-act structure, blah, 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 whatever. It's a good series, and it's huge, and it's out there, and it's affecting how people think about the issues that the books touch on, and obviously Transformers touches on things. If it interests you, it interests other people. And just because other people haven't written about it, they probably feel the same thing, like, do I really want to write this academic work about toys? Somebody should. Somebody should.
Okay.
It affects a lot of people.
Thanks.
Okay.
Hi. I was wondering, what do you guys think that the appeal is, I guess, for the outside world to read a story that they know was originally fan fiction? You mentioned a little bit that there's there's already an energized community surrounding the story, but the community, I guess, usually seems kind of smaller than the general reading audience that finds these stories. So is it like there's a scandal, like it's spicy for something that's really fan fiction?
I think that's probably part of it.
But I also think, at least for the Beautiful Bastard, which was in its original reception was the office, that it was sort of a different thing at the time. It wasn't early enough in the fandom, but it kind of started some more all-human stuff building at that time. And that story really had nothing to do with the Caine canon. I mean, all of my fic was very heavily like vampire, like emo. But the office really, there was no Edward and Bella in it. There was no sort of the canon elements, and so it kind of just riffed off the characters a little, and I think Christina, speaking of her, but you know, because she found this community and wanted to write a fun story, and it didn't have to be, and that's one of the nice things about fanfic. It doesn't really have to do anything with it, and at that point, that was something funny that was going on in Twilight. It just like took off on this path. So I think that the story itself stands alone. And that's why I think that, people are enjoying reading it, is because you don't have to love Twilight to love this stuff.
Well, and also, I function a lot in the world outside of the fandom community and outside of the science fiction